We are live. Yay. It says we've been live for 8 seconds, but the live thing literally just went live. It's
Honestly,
it's scary though. Like if it starts you being live the moment you hit the button, right? But you're like waiting to go live, but then you're acting like a dickhead.
but we are
So,
live, so we cannot be dickheads anymore.
well, there's a limit. We have to be a certain amount of dickheadish because that's like my charm. But whatever.
Hello,
So happy Saturday, the 24th, everyone. If you're tuning in live, welcome. If you're tuning in late, thanks for checking out the video after it posts. But my name is Chris Philbrook. You probably know that because this is streaming to all of my pages. But this fella right next to me, do you want to introduce yourself?
everyone. I'm Nahuel. I'm the administrator in the Ring Family Group, which is Chris' fans group, and I'm here as his guest. We are gonna do some bullshitting tonight. We're gonna go over a few things that happened in the last years, and since
Yeah.
Chris launched himself as an author, I think so. Hello, everyone. I'm finally live.
So, yeah, twofold, two things. Hey, Nick. Nicholas James Carpenter says hi. Um, so, two things that I wanted to kind of like celebrate today. It's the 13th anniversary roundabout of Adrian's Apocalypse, June 23rd, 2010. And it has kind of become my de facto like celebration of being a writer, even though I didn't actually start writing or start posting on that day. But because the date is so big in the book and Adrian's story is the one that I'm most well known for, it has become like my anniversary. And this is year 13. So yay, celebration time. The other thing that I wanted to do is Nawel's been, I don't even remember when you and I first started talking.
First time
2012.
we started talking, it was around 2014, 2015, because I won a challenge. You put on a contest asking something specific about one of the books, and I was the first to answer, and I won a book.
And
And
did
that
it ever
was
arrive?
which never arrived, like anything that you sent me.
Yeah,
Fucking
the
custom.
the Argentinian customs apparently just has a collection of my stuff that they want to keep. Hello, Mr. Castro. Anyway, so
I would
now,
like to
well,
know.
now, well, you originally found my writing through YouTube, right? The audiobooks were through YouTube,
Oh
and
no,
no, or was it the
it was
website?
before. It was around 2012, which I found your stuff. It was already
Right.
finished when I found it,
Yeah.
and well, I there's a little story about that because at the time I was obsessed with zombies. Everything zombies. I was on series, movies, games. The Left 4 Dead games were like the top game I was playing with my friends. We made lands with them playing that game, and I thought, well, I consumed every game, every movie, every series I can find about, and I was like, well, I can start reading. And you may have noticed, everyone may have noticed that I have an accent because my native language is Spanish. So the first books I started reading were in Spanish, and when I went through those, I was like, what if I try to read a book in English? And I thought, well, zombies are the shit, which I like the most. So I went on Google, put on something along the lines of free zombie books, and there was this ranking site in which you were at the
Mhm.
top. I don't remember how it's called, but it was a listing in which everyone will rank and vote on books, and
Right.
yours was at the top. And I was like, okay, let's give this a try. And I got in, I read the first entry, and I was set. I was, no, man, I gotta know what happens next. The fun thing is that I was not pretty good at English at the moment, so it was like a challenge for me.
Yeah, but it panned out. Like you wound up sticking with it the whole way through, and now like you speak English better than half the people in this country.
Well, it can happen because I really it's something I told you the other day when you were bullshitting before this interview is
Yeah.
I kind of learned how to use my vocabulary and my English through your books because that's the first time I ever read a book that was only in English, that was not any practice material or nothing that was translated because it was fresh new. It was just finished. I think I found it around June 2012, and I every time I go to an entry, I found a lot of words that I could not figure out that I had to search. So it took me around 6 or 7 months to go through the 8 books, despite me being around 3 or 4 hours every night reading until I was like, oh, I cannot read anymore. I should go to sleep. Something serious. And that's how it started. The first one.
Well, it's funny because I remember that that list, that website. It was like best zombie sites dot something whatever. And my buddy
Mhm.
Joe, who was working as an admin on the website, found it and was like, "Hey, let's get you on there." And then you could vote like every day or every couple of days or whatever. And we would just go into the forums, and one of us would be like, "Hey, don't forget to do your vote." And we put the link, and everyone just kept voting over and over and over. And there was a period in time where, like, I forget what the exact numbers were, but it was like, the number two place had like 700 votes, and the number three place had like 650, and I was number one with like 14,000 votes.
Yeah.
Like, it was absurd, the lead that I had at one point. I forget the number, but it was absurd. And I got so many people to come to the website from that list because people were going like Google and just dropping in like a generic search, like good zombie story or whatever. And whoever put that website together had all those meta tags or whatever, and was drawing in a ton of traffic. And because I was number one, that was just the first thing that they clicked. And we used to track where everyone came from, because you can follow with Google Analytics like where people came to your website from. And there were so many people. Like, at one point it was like 10 or 20% of our traffic was from that one like weird little list website. So whoever put that together, thank you. I never talked to them, but thank you.
Let's
I
see.
appreciate it. A little serendipity there. But yeah, it's a trip because I think you and I hit it off pretty quickly, and we were messaging and chatting and just BSing and stuff, and you were like doing things to like be helpful, and posting links in places and asking if you could promote this or promote that. And it was just really, really cool to connect with somebody that was like so supportive and just like nice, because I make the joke that no one promotes your work like you will, right? Because you're the only one invested in your stuff, as no one's more invested in your stuff than you. And when you find other people who like go to bat for you and like do things, even little things, it's like really, really cool. And I make the joke that like most of my family hasn't read any of my books. And I have a pretty big family, right? That like I have six sisters and four brothers, and I think three of them maybe have read my books. And then out of all their kids, and there's like 30 kids, maybe five or six of them have read my books, and I don't know if any of them have written me a review. So like if your family doesn't show up for you, it's just really cool to have somebody else that's a stranger show up for you. And then I find out that you're from Argentina, and it's like, wait, what? You're like halfway around the world going south. Like, that's so cool. And it just makes it really cool. And speaking of around the world, Rachel here is in Australia, and she just said good morning. And here it's closing in on bedtime. So good morning wherever you are in Australia, Rachel. But so you inspired me to ask you a question. What made you so obsessed with the zombie stuff back then? Like, was it like what got you hooked on the genre?
Oh, I do remember. I do remember when it happened. I was around 12. It was a Sunday. I used to bike a lot because I'm kind of hyper, and I do need to be on the move all the time. Like if I'm sitting down, like right now, I'm smoking because this calms me down a bit, and I'm not hyper, and I can focus on whatever I'm doing. So I used to like a lot. And one Sunday, I remember going out around 2 p.m. to go visit a friend that lived around 30 blocks from my house. And I was biking, and I noticed there wasn't anyone around, but not a soul. I made around 15 blocks, let's say a mile, and I did not see a car moving, someone, anyone, no one moving. It was like no one. And I noticed that, and I thought, what if I'm the last person alive over here? And I started thinking over that. And then I found out about the Resident Evil series, which was kind of that desperation. The world starts over because everyone is dying. And I was like, well, that could be a scenario in which that experience I had that Sunday will come to happen if I survive the first month or so. So I was kind of, from that point on, I was playing Resident Evil games, watching movies like 20 Days Later when I was a little older. And I always fantasize about what will I do, what will happen, how will I defend myself, what will I do if zombies ever come around. From that Sunday in which I noticed there was not anyone around. I do remember that quite clearly because it was a before and after. Before that, I was not even interested. But after having that experience of solitude, of there's no one around, maybe everyone vanished, I started to think, and some is fit that scenario in which the world may come to having maybe no one around, and all the buildings and everything that is part of a city, a neighborhood being standing up with no reason because there's no one living in there. And I was like, man, that's something. That's something amazing. And I started like going through that, and well, that started my obsession with zombies. Like, what will I do? What may I do? What shall I do if shit comes to happen?
Yeah,
And that's what I think it's the beginning point.
that's awesome.
Yeah,
Oh,
just
and
kind of an
Anthony's
experience.
got a good question here.
Yep.
Can you read that?
Yes, I read Anthony. And yes, I'm doing the translations into Spanish. I started with Dark Recollections. I have the main file which I'm correcting, going over and over and over again, because I'm not only trying to translate into Argentinian Spanish, which is a dialect every that happens in every Latin or Southern country. I'm trying to translate for the whole South America, Central America, and Spain. So it's taking a while, but it's happening slowly but surely. And I'm not a professional translator. I don't have a degree. I have had like 2 years with a private teacher. So I know my basis and my structures. But it's like everything else, I'm grasping on the go and seeing how things go and what they mean and how to use them. And that's how I'm going over it. I'm kind of thinking in both languages at the same
What?
time when I'm doing stuff. So it's like I'm translating and trying to interpret at the same time, which is a lot of work.
There's a Sofia Vergara quote, and I think it's actually a character that she plays in a show. But she's like, "Do you know how hard it is to swear in a different language? Because like your brain responds in your native language, and then you have to translate it on the fly and then say it, and sometimes it's right and sometimes it's wrong. And like one thing that makes me feel really good about knowing that you're working on translating it is you've read it and you know it, like you've gone through it. Like this is a story that you are very familiar with, so it's not just like someone who's just translating the text without any idea of what it's actually going for. So like I feel like it's going to be way more authentic as you keep working on it, which gives me like a tremendous sense of relief, rather than like going to Fiverr and paying somebody to just rando translate it or whatever. So yeah, Noah's been working on it for a long time, but he's got a job, he runs a shop, and as he gets time, he works on it. I don't think we ever had a specific date that we were hoping to get it done by. I know we've had many conversations about like title stuff and like the look of the covers and like how we want to adapt things and whatnot. So it's definitely something that he has been helpful with and doing, and it's something that I know that I really want to try for. I've only had my books translated into German, and I had a ton of trouble with my German publisher. So it would be really, really, really cool to get it into the Spanish language market, because it's a big market, and Nahuel's got me sold that there will be a lot of people who might really like it. So what's this question here? We got Aaron. My wife thanks you for the AUD series. She hasn't read or listened to it herself, but she has always wanted us to live self-sufficiently. Wasn't really interested. Supermarkets are easier. Your book combined with my anxiety got me on board. Awesome. That's really cool. That's a great story. I'm glad I've been able to inspire people to like obsess over having too much crap in their house. And hey, mama. So
Hello.
go ahead. Before we sat down tonight, I asked Nahuel if he had any questions that he wanted to pitch or anything he wanted to talk about. I have a small list of things that I wanted to chit chat about, but did you have something that you wanted now that we've got a little bit of a crowd here? Is there anything you want to try and embarrass me with? You want to stump the author? I don't actually know these questions, by the way. I have no idea what he's prepared, so I'm going
No, yeah,
completely blind.
I have some things that come up to my head right now, and I'm like, okay, this may sound interesting. Well, first off, I should make a clarification to everyone, which is kind of strange in my position to say this, but I've always but I never actually bought anything from Chris. I started reading when the blog was free, when the whole 8 books were available to read for everyone, because at the beginning, before Chris published the books, the site was free to read for everyone. Anyone that joined the site could read it without signing up. If you wanted to read the side stories, you have to sign up. I do remember when you weren't like, well, I'm gonna publish this because everyone wants me to publish, so the site is gonna go private. And only Dark Recollections was up to read for everyone. And I was like, oh, dude, I have read this like 2 times, and I was through my third time, and I was like, no, this is gonna be get private. And I always have been kind of a pirate, yar. So this is something you may not know, but at the time I replicated your whole site. I made a totally browsable copy of your website on my computers because it's like, okay, I don't have the money to spend on the books. I want to keep on reading on this, and it's like, man, what can I do? I cannot pay this. At the time, we were really struggling with money, so it was like, I cannot afford to do this, but I do still want to read them because I was like obsessed with the story and Adrian's development as a character, because it's like Adrian is relatable as a character because he is kind of on top of a few things, but others he's just figuring things out. And when you read him, you're going through his head, through his thoughts, through what he feels. And I was, no, I need to keep on reading on this. This is I have not fully integrated this into what I want to get from this. And well, you went private, and I kept on reading on those for a long time. I think it was until 2014 or so. When was when you were first published?
I think the official street date for when the printed and like ebook stuff started to come out was like 2014, like middle of 2014 or so.
Okay.
But I think I forget the exact timeline, but I started to get the publishing deal with the first publisher in 2012. Like I wasn't done writing it when we were in negotiations for it, so I knew that it was coming. And then we were in like negotiations for forever, and then I wound up pulling the rights because I didn't like the way the contract was going. And then it was like, all right, well, I got to do something. So, but you're not by any stretch of the imagination the first person to copy the whole website. Like I have gotten at least probably 10 people who over the course of time has been like, yeah, so I just copied it into Word. And then when my boss came by, I was just reading a document. And they were like, because if I'm sitting there with a web browser window open reading a website about zombies, right, like they're gonna know that I'm not working. But if I just copy and paste into a document and just have the document up on my computer, I won't get fired. And I think I've had that story 4 or 5 times. And then a
All
bunch
right.
of other people who, right? Yeah, no, you might have been the first one, but you're definitely not the only one. But and like it was funny because like the way I used to post it, when it was live on the website was at the time I was working third shift like Adrian was, and I would write usually like 2 to 5 entries in advance, and then I almost always had one of the side fictions like ready to go where I was working on it and I kind of knew where it was going to slot in. And then I would be awake, right? And then at midnight on the day that Adrian's journal entry was entered into Mr. Journal, right at midnight, 12:01, I would hit publish. With the idea being like, it goes, live at midnight my time, which is midnight his time, quote unquote. And people would stay up. They would literally stay up. And we had a ticker on the website that showed how many people were online. And, towards the end, there would be 2, 3, 400 people online at midnight, just waiting, waiting, waiting. And then I'd hit, submit, and it would go live. And then like 20 minutes later, the number would start to go down as they finished reading it, but like it was really cool. Like people would be crazy. Aaron's got a question. The website's still up and viewable or just the published versions? So the original adriansundeaddiary.com got hacked in 2016 or 2017, I forget. The best we were able to figure it out is it was somebody from Russia, and they brute forced my host's platform, I guess you'd say, and that gave them kind of like backdoor access to a bunch of websites. So I was one of like 70 or 80 websites that were compromised, and they were trying to steal credit card info because they, the company had my credit card info to bill me for, hosting and, registration and whatnot. And they weren't able to, use anything. And I was able to, I didn't lose any money or anything, but they maliciously destroyed everything. They wiped, basically back to nothing. All of the websites that I had running at the time, which was Tesser, AUD, and I had just made my author page. And I think I had Elmoran up and running too. And they literally wiped them all down to like basically nothing. And they actually put up like pictures of like memes and stuff, like ha ha ha, fuck you, buddy, kind of thing. So the website's gone. Right now, I'm pretty sure I have it set up that if you type in adriansundeaddiary.com, it just redirects you to my author website. So that has become my online sort of like central location. But the story isn't posted online in anywhere that I sanction officially. But you can go into the Wayback Machine and punch it in, and you can actually see the original website. And what was available publicly back then, you can get through the Wayback Machine. So
Everything is up there about the side stories because you need to log in to read them. And the forums, everything was lost. I tried to hack into it, but there's no way around it. So yeah, most of it was lost, and that sucked. Really.
Yeah. And then of course, like not only did I lose all that content, right? I was super bummed about the forums because there were like hundreds of fan fiction stories in there, and like dozens and dozens of conversations that had been running, threads of conversation that had been running for years, and gone, just gone. And there were people who had made like meaningful friendships and connections through the forums and through the chat feature we had, like there were people who made friends, and then all of a sudden the rug was yanked out, and you couldn't log in because the user database got corrupted, and like people were like trying to figure out how to talk. And I'm like on my Facebook, Twitter wasn't really much of a thing for me at then, but it was like, okay, hey guys, like if you're trying to connect, let's go to this fan club group that my fan Emma just made. Emma, by the way, is Mama Cat. She commented she was the one who actually founded the Ring Family group. Because she and I were having a conversation, and she's like, "Why do you not have a fan club?" And I'm like, "I don't no, like that's a thing. Like I should have a fan club. And she's like, yeah, you totally should. Like 10 minutes later, she sends me an invite, and she technically founded it. So thank you, Emma. But anyway, yeah, it was soul crushing. It sucked. But at the same time, it was like kind of a good thing because I had relied so heavily on the kind of the concept of posting online, and then compiling it and then making it into a book and then trying to release it, that I had gotten kind of stuck in that rut. And when it all kind of went down and I couldn't really do it anymore, it allowed me to pivot away to a much more stable host that was actually cheaper. And I enlisted the help of a buddy that does a lot of web design, and he helped me make my website more robust and more professional seeming. And in the end it worked out, and it didn't lose any money. They didn't get any of my financial information, and the content that was lost is tough, but whatever.
I do miss the old theme, the darkish black and brownish. You should go back to that style. I think that's my opinion. That's why another topic coming out of this, but that's gonna be later. It's the theme of the site, that darkish theme, the grayish letters, everything was awesome, man. It's like I have fond memories of that theme. I seriously miss that site. Speaking about that.
Cameron's asking, is there an AUD Facebook group? Kind of. There is the Ring family group, which is on Facebook, and that's basically like my general fan discussion thing. So it's mostly AUD because that's the thing that most people know me for, but it's basically for anything that I've written, or for chatting with other people who have read the books and spoilers, and I do some promotions and giveaways. And Nahuel here is an admin there, so he does a lot of like the the pruning of bad comments, and making sure that permissions are set up correctly, and that people aren't trying to spam or abuse the group or whatnot. But he also has access to a bunch of my Audible codes. He and I have a Google document where I give him the codes for stuff, and when people are like, hey, do you have a code for this, half the time he can do it. So if anybody is looking for an audiobook code of mine, you can go to the group and jump in and ask. And if I don't get it for you, Nahuel has the ability to get it for you. So he is the man with access to the vault. So
just hit me up. If you need a code, I have codes for almost everything, I think. Yeah, everything. So if you need a code for Audible mostly, I do have those for US or UK. So just ask me my PMs, DMs, or however you call them, and just reach to me, ask me whatever you want. And the only thing I will ask from you when I give you a code, and you can do it or not, this is your choice, is to leave a review. Not a positive one, not a negative one, an honest one, an honest opinion about what you thought about the books, about the narration, if you liked it, if you did not like it, if you wanted to improve on anything, just do it, and I will send you another code. So that's a chain thing that may lead you to saving a few bucks. So keep that in mind. If you want to have a code or stay with a friend, just ask me.
Yeah, and what Nahuel said about doing a review there, the codes are given to me by Audible for the express purpose of giving them away, so people cash them in and then theoretically write a review. And I kind of have never really used them for that. Like I don't really push for getting reviews on stuff for everything. Like there are some things that like kind of languish and need reviews, and I'm like, hey guys, please. But for the most part, I just kind of stockpile them. And then when someone's like, I'm broke, I need a book, it's like, boom, here you go. Like I got you. But hey, if you could leave a review, that'd be great too. So Aaron, if you use Audible, let me put his question up. Sorry. If you use Audible, there are gift codes for free audiobooks, and it's like a string of numbers and characters, whatever, and then a link that's you can redeem it. And if you click on the link that comes with the code, and then copy and paste the code into the little thing there, it just automatically gives you the audiobook as a free download. it used to be the codes worked on anything, right? So if I gave you a code, you could go to Audible and punch the code in and get any audiobook for free. And what happened was is people would be like, yeah, can I get your book for free? And they'd get a code, and then they'd just go get the other book that they actually wanted, not yours. But now the codes actually only work for the book that they were generated for. Which is great because, you know, I would give out 10 codes back in the day and I'd get like 3 returns on them, and the other 7 went off to somebody else to buy something else, which was a bummer. So if anybody needs a code, ask. I'm happy to give it to you. Nahuel is happy to give it to you. Whoever gets to you first, we can do it. And you know, all I ask and all he's asking is that if you do get a code, just leave an honest review after. You know, and that helps me. It helps you. You know, giving away a book to someone who's going to write me a review that's having a bad day is worth losing a couple of bucks on a sale. So it's all good. And Emma here, you're very welcome. Yeah, Emma, Mama Cat is the person who started the Ring family group. So big debt of gratitude to her for taking the time to do that and forcing my hand to have a little bit more of a social footprint. Because I get,
if it wasn't for her, maybe we could not be here talking because you did not have a group and we could not communicate.
yeah,
We are, like you said, half a world away, so it's like, yeah, that helped a lot.
the amount of weird moments of like connection that have happened through my writing astounds me, like almost on a daily basis, where people you know, they mention that like, oh, I found out about the story from this person, or I read it, you know, when this was going on. And like the amount of like weird little things that had to happen just so, and the effect that the story then has on them is really crazy. Like I saw Tracy Wilson, his name scrolled by in the comments earlier, and Tracy is now a writer, but back in the day, he found my website when he was working, and he's a 911 dispatcher, 911 dispatcher. Um, and he posted the link to AUD on a dispatcher's forum, right? A website that existed just for 911 dispatchers, emergency dispatchers, to talk about the job, to vent, whatever. And one day I saw a spike in traffic where I went from like, you know, 500 users to like 3,000 users, like overnight, and was like, what the hell? And like went into the analytics, and they all came from that place. They all came from that 911 dispatcher's website. And at the time, I didn't know Tracy. You know, he was just a user on the website. And I went to the forums and was like, hey, does anybody use this website? Because like whoever you are, you just posted a link and literally like multiplied the activity on the website by like 6-fold. And then Tracy was like, it's me. But like that's an example of how small like innocuous little things can turn into these like massive connections, like not only of like volume but like importance. You know, like you meet people and you make relationships with people. Like I was talking to my daughter the other day, my eldest Willow, and I was talking to you at the time. Like you had left me a voice message, and I was at the playground, and they were like running around, you know, raising hell as kids do. And I listened to the voicemail message, and she came running over, and she's like, who's that? And I was like, oh, that's Nahuel. And she's like, who's Nahuel? And like, I've said your name before. And she's like, oh, he's not in America, right? And I was like, no, he lives down in Buenos Aires. And she's like, what? Like you're talking to someone from Argentina? And it like totally blew her mind. And then that got me to think about it. Like, wait a minute. Like yeah, like I'm actually having a conversation with somebody from Argentina right now. That's really, really cool. You know, like 15, 16-year-old Chris never would have ever thought that I would have conversations with people, you know, from, you know, far flung portions of the world, you know, from my little rural town in New Hampshire. But that's the kind of thing that's built, you know, over time. You know, all these different people that I've come across, and then the friendships that they then make with each other, and like, you know, the community that's grown around the writing has just been like mind blowing to me. Like I have a really hard time like coming to grips with it because it's just so big. I can't wrap my mind around it.
Well, at the same time, it's reciprocous because I have the same sensation. It's like, okay, I'm and more so because you're an author and you're a bestseller author, and I was like, dude, I'm not. I have read this book that I love, that I'm going through it. Like, I was like, when I first spoke to you, I was like in my fourth run of going through it again, to read it again, and I was like, man, I'm talking to the author, and he's answering me back, and he's really cool, and I was like all fun, like, starstruck, like, Christopher, man, he's talking to me, and I'm talking to him, and this is crazy, man, that was crazy,
Yeah,
seriously.
that's so strange for me because like I talk to like people who meet me like casually, right? Like around town or whatever, or like most recently it happened at the girls' school, right? Because you know, they found out or knew that I was a writer, and then they don't think anything of it because it's like, oh, people have jobs, whatever, and writer, cool, whatever. And then a teacher did a little bit of research on me, and she's like, oh wow, you're actually like a pretty successful writer. I'm like, yeah, pretty weird, right? And then like she read one of the books and then was like, you wrote that? Like, yeah, it's literally what I do for a living now. And then like you start to think about it, like people get excited to take a picture with me, and that is fucking absurd. Like I am sorry, but like when I'm at a convention, like, can we get a picture? I'm like, why the fuck do you want a picture with me? Like I'm not that photogenic, guys. But like because of the writing and because they connected with it, like it's special for them, and I have to remind myself that it's exciting for me to meet people who have read my writing. So obviously it's going to be exciting for many people who have read my writing to meet me too, right? So okay, all right, fine, I can live with that reality, but it's really weird to think about, really weird. And I'm not famous by any stretch of the imagination.
Mm,
I'm not.
you're notable. Everyone knows your name, and everyone wants to get on board with you. So yeah, take that as a granted,
Yeah.
because people know your name and they want to have something to do with you. Take my word for it.
Well, I
Sure.
appreciate that.
And it was really crazy. I think the first time we spoke was because of the contest, and you arranged to send it to me in the book and wherever, and you were like, I told you I was in Argentina, and you were like, oh man, okay. And I think you were not expecting someone from so far away to be seriously reading your stuff and going through it and actually being kind of involved. But I mean, I was trying to post funny things, some related things in the group at the time, and I was another user posting shit. Sorry if I became so large, but it's like, okay, over here it's around 11 p.m. So it's been a long day of work, so I'm kind of unfiltered. And what I was trying to say is, I went on a tangent. I got lost again. I told you this was gonna happen. What I was trying to say is that, oh, it's pretty crazy. Yeah, that we are in contact. Oh, at the time it was awesome, man, to have your attention, because it was like, man, your books were really something. I mean, I have read books, but I have not reread them like around 3 or 4 times. I have not done that before. It's like, this is something else, man. The genre style, the way he speaks, the way he communicates, what is going on, how he's acting. Man, your character was some fucking point, man. Seriously, was it was like, I gotta learn from Adrian. Sometimes I ask myself, what will Adrian do in this kind of situation? He's
He
like,
would he would fuck it up, and then
and
he would
I
try
go,
and figure out how
yeah,
to make
he
it
will,
better.
well, he will try to do the right thing. He will mess it up, but his soul, his heart was in the right place. So it was like, all right, I should strive for that. And
Mhm.
that he's been a kind of a model of how I want to be. It's like, okay, I was an angry teenager, lots of moving around, lots of um, friends that I missed along the way, and I got kind of what's the word? Well, I was pretty angry, and Adrian was not. I mean, he was angry, but he was not acting on it, and it was like, okay, maybe there's some other way to do things, and I started to try and replicate him. it's crazy, man. Your writing is crazy. I mean, it's
Thank you.
seriously.
I the funny thing is like I worked really hard when I was writing it to try and be like authentic psychologically because my background is I worked in mental health and I had the writing in mind when I was working in mental health, and I knew that when I was writing him, I wanted it to be like psychologically accurate without being so heavy-handed that it felt preachy. So when I was writing him, I wrote him as legitimately as I could, as close to like how a real person would think about those things. So like he like the constant doubt, the guilt, the way he talks about things, the way he like puffs himself up to like build up to do something, and like the way he like talks shit about himself, like he's this ultimate fucking badass, but he's not, you know, and he makes tons of mistakes, and he's not as good at things as he thinks he is. But in his journal, he like that's where he psychs himself up. That's where he like does this motivational shit where he like figures out how to do this and he like gives himself the bravery, And I mean, I don't know if anyone else is like that, but I know like there are a lot of times where I'm like, all right, you can fucking do this. All right, I'm gonna go this. I'm gonna do this thing, and it's what you want to do. And like I have that dialogue in my head, but for him, it's in the book. It's in his diary. And like he has, hallmark, behaviors and thought patterns of people with all different kinds of trauma and whatnot. But the amount of people who read it and then connect with that like that flawed, that kind of mental illness sort of like internal struggle aspect of him, and that's not meant to be derogatory in any sense of the matter, in any sense of the way, because like I suffer with the same shit he does, but that like that inner dialogue is really authentic, and people really seem to connect with it. So
Well, I think that this is. I'm not trying to be derogatory, as you said, but it's like everyone has something. We are all kind of cursed with something, with some trauma, maybe
oh
with
yeah.
some mental illness we are not aware of, and we are all struggling. And yeah, the honesty of Adrian, his honesty, his sincerity, because when you read him, he's talking to someone, but he's being honest, he's being sincere about how he feels, and it's like that's a great coping mechanism. I
Hmm.
mean, that's something to copy on and to cope with. So it really is being Adrian, being an honest and sincere character really helps.
Yeah, thank you.
Makes him a hero.
Yeah, Jessica has a comment. It's funny. Adrian is the most human character I've read in a long time. It's so easy to connect to his story. A, thank you. I appreciate that. It's a nice compliment. And B, everybody who leaves me shitty reviews on the books says almost verbatim the exact opposite. They say like he's shitty, I don't understand why anybody likes him. I couldn't relate to him. And like I cannot divine the difference. Like I'm not sure what makes somebody really gravitate to him and like really connect to him versus like they only get the bad things about his personality, right? Cuz like there are people who have left me some reviews that literally just don't make sense. Like they just don't make sense. Like I'm not sure you read this book.
Mm.
Like the way you're talking
Yeah.
about it, I'm not actually sure you read this book. And like I've never been able to figure out like why people really connect with him versus really hate him. And I don't know. I'm sure that there's a some kind of algorithm that I could figure out, but it's just interesting that that's one of the things that like is the live or die facet.
I believe in that it's an ego thing. I mean, if you cannot admit to yourself that you're faulty, that you may make mistakes, if you are kind of arrogant about how you do things, maybe you don't get it because you're not being honest with yourself.
Mhm. Yeah, it's true.
That's my take on it. Why people do not get it, or maybe they have not read it, and like the guy that posted, you posted just a day ago, someone that sent you a personal message like
Yeah,
shitting
yeah.
on your side, and it's like, dude, have you seriously read it? It's like
No.
This has nothing to do with the book. What you're really talking about is like, okay, you're clinging onto something very specific, a very little small detail, and it's like it blew everything for you, and it's no, this is not what I like. That's okay.
I mean, if you don't like it, you don't like it. It's not going to entertain everybody. I accept that. I gave up on that hope, pretty fucking early in my writing career, where it was like I poured my heart and soul into these things, and then like 25% of the people who read it say it's horrible. Oh, okay. Like no matter how hard I work on it, there's going to be somebody who doesn't like it, right? So listen to the people who do and continue to write for them, right? Don't try to convince the people who don't like it.
No, no,
Keep
no, want to do.
keep with the people who do support it. What else we got here? Anthony, connect with the losses he goes through. Yep, that is honest and relatable. If you suffered the loss of a lot of friends and loved ones. Yeah, one of the things that I get from veterans a lot is that his the way he lingers on loss and the way it keeps coming back for him and the way he's constantly talking about how his decisions have led to the loss of people and how he talks about how I wish I was there to do this or I could have done something differently. That's a pretty authentic way to think. So, and he is us. He's the king of self-deprecation.
Yeah, and he
Unless
holds
he's
a
trying
lot
to
of
pump himself
regret.
up.
Adrian holds a lot of regret. He regrets almost everything he does. He's
Mm-hmm.
like, I gotta do this, and then he's constantly like, the word is, it's not comparison. Is critic of his actions, and he
Yep.
always
Yep. Yep.
tries to. He beats himself hard. It's like, I'm a shit human being. He gets boost. Why did I not rescue Cassie? And he's like honest about it. It's like, am I really a coward? And the self-realization that he was maybe not as tough as he thought he was. And that self-doubt is something that is real in all of us every day. I mean, if you're honest to yourself about yourself, you should doubt yourself almost every day. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I tend to do that a lot. I mean, even being here, it's like I don't think I speak English properly well enough to hold a conversation in which everyone can understand me, because I do have an accent and I notice it and I know about it. And like you told me, no, it's like it's fine, and I'm like, okay, and I'm pushing towards it, and and I'm like, I gotta do this anyway, in this way or this way. I gotta do this because it's something I feel I have to do. And Adrian has that a lot. He goes by his heart. He does what he feels is right. And even after doing the right thing, he's constantly criticizing himself because he could have done a little better that he has done. And that's, at least I'm that. I'm constantly beating myself on I'm not doing things well enough. And well, that's how it is for me, at least.
Right.
That's my opinion.
Yeah. It's crazy.
It is crazy. I mean, your character is so sincere, so honest in his ways, and he tries to do the right thing, man. I mean,
That's funny. Aaron, the comment here. When Gilbert died, he just arrived on a job site. And one of his work colleagues had to ask if he was okay. I'm sorry. I explained to him what happened. He reckoned I looked like I just lost my favorite uncle. Yeah.
the character is unlovable. I love Blake, man. Blake
Yeah.
really struck a chord with me. It's like he made a pretty bad choice on his part by letting his girlfriend get into the farm and all the pain she was going after, because the farm was really fucked up place, and he was like
Mm-hmm.
regretting himself. He was not able to cope with it, and he was getting into a feral state. When Adrian found him, he was shaggy. He was not used to speak to anyone. He was stalking on the farm, on Adrian, on some other people. He was like losing it, and Adrian took him, and it was like he started to be civilized again, and he was really trying. I mean, Blake is a character that was mean. That I love Blake.
You know
Blake,
what's funny?
fucking
What's
awesome.
what's funny is when you've always been Team Blake Like ever since we talked about it, you were always like, "Oh, I really like that character. I really like that character." And I was like, "Yeah, he's pretty cool. He's neat. He's good. I'm glad with him." So last month and last 6 weeks or so, I've gone back through the original 8 books and re-edited them and like cleaned everything up and like fixed a bunch of little mistakes and kind of reorganized some things, rewrote a bunch of things to make it flow better. And one of the things that really stood out to me when I was doing it was Blake. And I like read his entire arc, right? His redemption arc where he shows up as this like kind of fucked up weird kid who like is like helpful but also sketchy, and like they can't
Mhm.
trust him, and then he does some like weird stuff and whatever. And I got to the end of his arc and I was like, you know, he actually had a really great arc.
Cool.
And like I don't think I really appreciated like the level of like character development that he actually showed in the story, and also what he pulled out of several other characters, right? Like there are some interactions with Blake from Gilbert and Adrian that are like, they are archetypal to the story, like conversations that they have with him that are literally like huge moments in the story. And I never really grasped that like he had that much of an impact on the story. And what's also funny, and a lot of the newer people probably have no idea about this, but I would periodically on the website, I would hold contests. And one of the things that came up every once in a while, I let people design a character for the story, not just name a character, but actually design a character. And Dan Pettyjohn, who lives in Montana, I think. He lives up in that neck of the wood. I forget. I could look at it. Maybe it's Idaho. But Dan won the contest and designed Blake. And he didn't design him, to the level that he wanted becoming in the story. But he basically was like, I want a character that's kind of like me. I want a young guy who's got a kid who's like kind of fucked up and da 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 da, and like had the very basic idea for it. And he was only supposed to be like a little one off. Like he was only supposed to show up in like 2 or 3 entries and then maybe get gunned down in a battle or whatever. But then I just liked him and it fit, and he was the perfect character to bring the farm storyline in. And he, now he's still in the story. Book 14, he's still back at Bastion doing stuff. He's married with a kid. He probably has two now, who knows. But like seeing him grow from that to where he is. So
Yeah,
Marla,
I'm happy
oh
that
no,
he's still thinking around.
spoiler alert. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, at this point, it's like well, the stuff has been out
Yeah, to be
for
fair.
a long time. So spoilers, yeah, people, there are gonna be spoilers in the
Yes, sorry,
conversation.
Marla. Sorry, Marla. It's okay. It didn't happen. Just cleanse your Massengill. Move on.
We came out. Well, another thing about your characters. Well, if I think this is the right moment to drop this in.
Let's do it.
There's a Wikipedia I've been working on for a year now. I've stopped because I'm doing translations, I'm working, and I'm really busy all the time. It's like my weeks last around 14 days, in which I have 1 day to rest. So it's like, yeah, no. I would like doing stuff because I'm hyper, I need to be focused, but okay. There's a Wikipedia in which you guys, everyone in the chat room, I'll drop a link after this stream, in which you can read about the characters through book 1 and 8, with their biographies, with their interactions, their family members. And you should really check it out because I'm slowly building up guide, kind of an index thing in which you can find locations, characters, main events, secondary events, things that happen in the side stories, because there are a lot of side stories. If you have not noticed, it's not only the main storyline, which is Bastion, and now is Adrian's March, but there are many, many, many stories made up by the community because they liked your universe and they are sticking to it, and they have wrote a lot of stuff. I think there's a few ones from the forum. Am I right?
Yeah, the first anthology in the Tales series, Unhappy Endings, all of those stories were ones that came from the original forums because they were just so good and like so accurate. that when I was going to put the book out, I like reached out to those people and I was like, hey, I have an idea. Like I want to take all these stories, you know, now that the website's kind of dead, and like I want to put them together and make them official and release it so people who have never experienced the website can get these like really good fan fictions from the forums. And that was the idea, that, you know, was the genesis for the Tales series. And then once that was out, I was like, hey, I can write more stories about things that I didn't cover in the series, which is why you start to get things like, you know, like how the guy got stuck in the swing, the zombie in the swing.
Yeah.
And you know, there's a story where like a deaf lady is at, you know, she's like trying to find her way around the world and she can't hear anything, and they're not making any noise anyway, so she's not actually at much of a disadvantage, and interesting stories like that.
Well, there I'm trying to index all of those, the character scene. If you're listening to this and you have a character in one of those stories, I could really use a bios file, a short description with the character, so I can really integrate it into the Wikipedia, and everyone can search it. I mean, if you look it up in Google right now while you're listening through this, look up Adrian's Undead Diary wiki, and the first link should send you to the wiki, which is still in development. You can lend a hand if you want, if you know how to use the code in a wiki, in the wiki site, which is really similar to a forum. If you have ever been in a forum, it's pretty much like that. It's code pasting, and it's not really complicated. If you want to lend a hand, I could really use it. I don't have much time. I wish I had more time to do this, because it's like this. I want to do this really integrated, so you can actually read about the characters. Mostly, if you have read the books, you're gonna find it useful. If you have not, you're gonna find spoilers. So know that spoilers are helpful.
Well, I mean, I think if you're going to the wiki, right, which is the collection of all knowledge from a whole series, I think the implication is that there's going to be spoilers there, right? Like, you know, but you know, whatever. Earmuffs.
Heads up for everyone. Maybe they were not expecting that. Maybe they have gone through the 1 through 8, and they have not started with the Adrian's March saga, and they found something, and they are gonna find something. So be aware of that.
Yeah, I forget what the number was, but when book 8 wrapped, I think I had something like 247 named characters by then.
Oh, plenty.
And I remember, like, I actually have spreadsheets, you know, the original spreadsheets where I had like where everyone, you know, their first appearance, and you know, who they talked to, where they lived on campus, and you know, like all of these different things, and like all that data, you know, I had to keep it correlated. And the bigger the story got, the more complicated it got, right? Because it's like a, you know, spider's web.
Yeah.
And it's one of the reasons why I got really tired writing around book 8 because to write an entry, it wasn't just I wrote what happened to Adrian that day. I had like 16 people around him in his orbit that I had to all touch on and build stories around. And it became pretty laborious to just keep all the facts in order. Never mind write a compelling story, you know? And there are a lot of entries in book 7 and book 8 that become pretty repetitive because like he basically is just like giving you updates on the same 6 or 7 people. And that's one of the reasons why, like, when Adrian's March happened, earmuffs, if you haven't read book 9 and beyond, one of the big things that I wanted to do with that is I wanted to shrink the cast for that story. I wanted to get back to that like smaller group of like 10 or 12 max, you know, that way it could be much more intense with those few characters. And it wasn't him just like constantly talking about all of these people who are doing stuff for him and like the logistics of living at Bastion and whatnot, which, you know, many people really, really like that. But at some point it just becomes like, you know, you're writing a shareholder meeting note where you're talking about how all the different departments are performing. And, you know, that got kind of old, but that was the reason why I wanted to make the cast smaller moving forward. It's just easier.
It's much easier to keep track on what everyone is doing, because it becomes really convoluted, and you start fumbling around. Should I write this? Should I not? Is this gonna be too much? I
Right.
understand. It's a tough decision to make, which gets in and what not.
Yeah, it's weird. All right, so I already know your favorite characters, Blake. of the different storylines that appear in the series, is there any that appealed to you more or less? So like,
Yeah,
there's the like the reclaiming the school arc, and then there's the Westfield arc, and then there's the farm arc, and then the factory. Is there any of those that you like or dislike more than others?
yeah. Midnight, book three, is my favorite. The Westfield Sean implications, how Adrian dealt with it, because he could have gone burn that place down, kill every fucking soul in it, and that's it. And that will have been the last of it. And no more Westfield, no more menace, no more people blowing up my gas stations, no more people trying to invade my home that I made safe. It's like that series, man. The way you dealt with Sean in a way that was not as violent as it could have been, because Adrian could have gone wild and fuck this and let's pop everyone that pops here their head of the school. And he was actually thinking about it. But Gilbert kind of worked him around. Let's do this another way. Let's parlay or intentions into them and see. Let's see what happens. And man, I was blown when everyone like made a cue against Sean, and they like the conversation with it was Captain Snowpants.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that what was that in the moment in which Adrian tells him, "Did you know that the guys in the were in the that blew the gas station that I killed were not armed?" And he was like that second in which realized he put two and two together, and it's like, dude, that moment which Captain Snowpants made this switch. Like Adrian
Mm-hmm.
was his first enemy. He's talking to him, but he's like, no, hold on. This guy knows something, and he's trying to tell me something, despite we having this enemy relationship, because they were enemies at the time. They were
Mm-hmm.
beating each other in their safe places, seeing what they were up to, and it was like, man, he actually solved that in the least violent way. He actually gave Sean a chance to go away, man. It's like this was a shit show, but let's forget about it. Let's not be the angry people we want to be, and let's find another way. And
Mm-hmm.
you did it, and it happened, and it was like the resolution, man, was. And now they have friends, and Mike, and all the people that were in Westfield. It's like, man, you actually like made friends with who you consider your enemies and who consider you the enemy. This was like, man, I was seriously not expecting that. I was like, wow, man, seriously, how did he do that? I was impressed. I keep
Thank you.
going through that book specifically. Maybe I do not start the whole Bastion series, but book three, man, I started and I finished. And maybe a month after, I started again and I finished again. It's like, man, it's awesome.
That is
That's one.
book 3 and 4, I think, are really like the pinnacle for me. Like the that whole storyline, and like the introduction of Gilbert, and like the dynamic of Sean is such a really, like, I think it's like the best of it, because it has elements of the supernatural, but hasn't, like, the supernatural kind of piece kind of takes over towards the end, because it's like, the meta kind of collapses in on Adrian. But that's when it's very, like, very, narrow, and the focus is tight, and he wants to go on a rampage, like you said, and he's got to like meter himself and meter himself and meter himself and meter himself. And I think that was a really big lesson for him as a character, as a person, that, like, the joke, like, he's a hammer, right? He sees a nail and
Yeah,
wants to hammer it, right? Like,
yeah,
that's his implication, that's his his follow through, right? Like, he has a problem, he makes it go away, right? But that's not the point of the story, and him coming to grips with that, like, I have to find a better way to do this. And if I can't find a better way, I have to try, right? And when he finally kind of grasps that, and that's an inadvertent lesson that Gilbert teaches him, because Gilbert just wants him to do it with the minimum amount of loss of life, right?
Yeah.
Like that's Gilbert's thing. It's strategy. But what he's actually teaching Adrian in that moment is you got to try. You have to try and do this a better way. And that takeaway for him really changes Adrian's mindset, and like the way he tries to handle people. Because if you notice, like later on in the books, in book 7, when Adrian's dealing with the factory, he has every reason in the world to level that place, every single fucking reason, and he tries so hard to not murder people, and at every chance they just keep putting themselves in a situation where he has to, right? Like he's like, he shoots a guy that like falls and gets paralyzed or smashes his legs, and he's like, hey, so is there any way we could do this without shooting more people? Like he's literally trying to have a conversation with this guy that he just shot. And he's like trying to redeem these people, and in the end they just don't want to be redeemed. They're not interested in trying to make peace, they're not interested in escaping, and he winds up having to have them killed. And the point is that he tried, like he still tried, he attempted to be as minimally violent as possible. And yeah, he still shot people, he still did it on purpose, but he tried to be selective and strategic.
Yep.
and attempt to not just like go to war per se, even though like some of his language is like, I'm gonna fucking kill all these people, I'm so pissed. But then when it actually comes to making the decision, he says, wait a minute, no, I'm gonna do this instead. But he still psychs himself up. So
Well, we are human beings, and sometimes in life that happens to us, happens to every one of us at some point in our lives. And it's like you can take the violent way, or you can talk it out and see if there's something else that is going on that you can sort out. And the problem per se, sometimes it's just one people making everyone else be aggressive against you, and it's like if you deal with that, just that person, just with them, it's like everyone else is gonna drop it down. It's like, no, this was their intent to have an issue with you, and if you sort it out in a non-violent way, like Adrian did because of Gilbert, that's something else, man. That parlay, that negotiation, that okay, let's go with the minimal amount of force necessary. It's not a let's blast this. That's admirable, man. That's admirable in someone, because that's what a hero tries to do. And I'm gonna go on a tangent over here, but it's like there's a religious factor in your writing. I mean, some people, I'm not a particularly religious person. I'm kind of agnostic. I think there's a pattern of things that make the world better, and let's try for that. I do not discard there's a higher entity or something, but at the same time, it's maybe not an entity. Maybe it's a pattern of things that happen are reiterable, and that's the way. And it's like in your books, you start playing with that from a fantasy perspective, because there are the powers that be, which are good and evil in some ways, and it's not particularly religious with any religion. I mean, you could read this from coming from any background, and you will get it. I mean, I always like that, because it's not only a zombies, let's kill zombies, let's survive thing. There are more implications into this, in which what should we do if this thing happened beyond trying to survive? It's like, let's build a better world out of this. And Adrian strives for that, and that makes him a great character, man. It's like he's a real hero. And like, kudos for you, because you really integrated the religious aspect, because everyone has some kind of belief in something or not, and you were kind of appealing to all of them. At least for me, it was appealing. The religious side of it.
well, it
I
was
will not say that Adrianism is a thing, but it maybe we can make a cult out of this.
hey, the day's young. So when
Yeah.
when I was hatching the idea for what the cause of everything was, I knew I was going to do something supernatural, because I didn't want to do a virus. Like, it was like the flavor of the day. And when I was in school, when I was getting my psychology degree, one of the things that I took a lot of classes on was theology, because a huge portion of people's psychological makeup and the way they cope with the world is through their faith, right? So learning how to interact with people who deeply believe in their faith is a huge part of being effective in mental health, right? And when you work in mental health, you don't want to discount anyone's belief system, even if you don't agree with it. You don't belittle it, you don't doubt it, you don't question it, you don't say, "Hey, are you wrong about Jesus?" No, you don't. You respect that they believe that, right? Because it's important to them. Whether or not you believe it is irrelevant. And I studied, at least, in a tertiary fashion, like many of the world's religions, and they're in many ways so similar that, like, the 10 commandments kind of thing breaks down and applies to, almost every religion in some way or another. And then they're also so dissimilar in how they view, how you should live, and the dogma of how you control things. And I thought it would be really fun to kind of include that idea of, like, no matter what you believe, no matter what religion you believe, no matter what version of God you think of, no matter, if you're Buddhist and you don't believe in God at all, or if you're Hindi and you believe in 300 gods, um, what's a common unifying thing that they can all agree on? Make the world a better place, right?
Yeah.
Make the world a better place. Try to be a better person, right? And if you're into religion, and I did a halfway decent job, I kind of touch on, 6 or 7 of the major faiths, and I try to include some of that stuff to show you that I'm like, I'm not saying anyone's wrong, and I'm not saying anyone's right, but what I am saying is that if we all come together and focus on this one thing, if you try to be a better person, then we will all be trying to make a better world. And I don't know how good a job I did on it. But that's like, if Adrianism was a thing, that would be it, right? Try to be a better person and try to make a better world.
So put yourself in the middle of the years and try to solve this the most specific way possible. Is you don't have to go up in arms against everything because they disagree with you, which is the problem with the major religions. Is like, okay, they share this thing that they want to strive to make the world a better place, but they do not coincide in how
Hmm.
they highly different on that, but it's like, okay, if you can resonate with the good in them, yeah, you can speak to all of them, and not
Hmm.
from a hate perspective, but let's come together and let's try to figure this out. I mean, we
Right.
have all these spot point of views that lead to one place.
Hmm.
Why should we care so much about I'm right and this is the way if we are straying for the same thing? We
Right.
can
Well,
come
even
together.
even if you're atheistic,
Yeah.
the belief still applies, right? Like, you don't believe in any religion or any God at all. Well, do you believe in being a better person?
I think everyone would say yes,
Right.
unless
Right. Do you want the world to be a better place? Yes, right? So, when I was writing it, I mean, that's a very, optimistic kind of, broad strokes take on faith and whatnot. But I really wanted to include that in the story. I really wanted it to be a big key part of, like, it's not enough to just survive. This is our chance. This is the chance of us to take a look at what we're doing wrong. In 1,000 different ways, humanity is fucking each other up and fucking the world up. And this is our chance, right? If we can all sit down and agree to just try a little bit harder and be a little bit better, maybe we can turn this apocalypse into a rebirth of the world. And we'll see. People I think connect more with his own personal psychological stuff, rather than like the overarching message of good versus evil, I think. But that was important for me to try to execute.
And
Scott.
you're quite right. I kind of came to not to a conclusion about what I do believe or not, because in my family there's a side which is Christian, there's the other one that is atheist, and it's always been back and forth, throwing like, yeah, you, but you this and your relation this. But since you don't have a relation, you cannot say this because you don't understand. It's like maybe it's an understanding thing. You gotta pay attention. I mean, if you really listen to someone that is kind of religiously inclined, speaking about what they mean with by their religion, it's like they just want to make the world a better place, and that's what everyone has in common. That's it. I usually, I mean, I understand it because I was in that hateful position in which you believe in God, then you're dumb or you're needy or
Hmm.
you cannot solve things by yourself. And I was that person. And actually, Adrian made me realize that maybe I'm being an asshole and I'm not really listening or paying attention to this. And I'm making enemies
Right.
because I'm just angry and focused on being a dumbass, which is
Well,
like, okay, I realize that there's something else that I should be paying attention to. There's a logos implied in everything we have around us. So it's like, let's pay a little attention. And I started listening. So that's how I came to it. Like, maybe I'm agnostic right now. I don't believe, but it's like, I don't believe it's purely everything we just see around us, but the things we do and how we create the world, the word world is highly logistic. It's the logos itself. It's what we are building. It's not what the universe brought around. We're not just animals eating, shitting, fucking sleeping. No, we are trying to build something and we have figured many things out. Why cannot go a step further and pay attention. Just pay attention, man. That's something I really took out of from your books. I mean, before that, I was like, nah, this is bullshit. Your whole system is bullshit. Everything is bullshit. And I was like, okay, let's pay attention. Let's see what they are talking about. It's like, yeah, there's a common point. They are pointing towards the same direction. Why are they not able to see they're all trying to do the same thing?
right.
Point of view, man.
Well, I
It's
think people get hung up on the dogma, right? They get hung up on what people tell them they have to do to, believe in God, right? Or only these behaviors make you a good person, right?
mm,
And then when you define what makes a person good versus just trying to be better and trying to help everyone else be better, right? Then you start getting those clashes of ideology, right? Where like, I believe in
mm,
this, I don't believe in that. And because I believe in this and you don't believe in this, then we're never going to get along. Like, well, hold on. Hold on. Like let's take a step back. Where are you going with your hopes and your dreams, right? Trying to make the world better. That's where I'm going to. We're not always going to agree on everything. We're just not, right? Because of the way you were
no,
raised, the way I was raised, the reality of my life on the ground versus your life on the ground. And like trying to find ways to just kind of like, if you can't push forward together, you can push forward parallel, right? Like we don't all have to fucking hold hands, right? You don't need to agree with everything I do in my life. I may think you're fucking crazy the way you live yours, but if I
mm,
know you're trying to be a good person in your own way and you're letting me be a good person in my own way, then the end goal's the same.
yep.
And the problem is people get hung up on ideologies, and we're working on it. We're getting there, hopefully. And we take several steps back and several steps forward, but hopefully, not to, sound arrogant or to toot my own horn, but my hope is that people can read a book like mine and get those little bits, and at least think a little, right? And I'm not asking anybody to change. I'm not saying, if you're Buddhist, you're a fucking idiot and you need to convert to Christianity. And I'm not saying that if you're, into Shinto, you've got everything right, and Lutherans are wrong or what. I'm not saying any of that. I'm just saying like, hey, let's all take a second, take a breather, take a step back, look at what the end goal is, right? And
Yep.
realize that we all really are trying to get to the same goal. And if we could work together a little bit better, we might have a much better experience on this, rock floating through the universe. And I did that in a zombie story. So
And I think the both of us being here live right now is proof of that because it's like we are half a world away and we are still. I see your story and I think I see what you're trying to do with your story, what you're trying to teach and play with and expose and see how you deal with it. from a sincere point of view, and it's like, man, I like what this guy is doing, and it's like it helped me to sort a few things I have in the background, hidden in my closet, and it's like if this happened to me, maybe it can happen to other people. That's why I'm so inclined to share everything you do, to try to boost you up and do the things you cannot do because you're a busy man, you're a father, you have a career, and you can only do so much because we're human monkeys, we are not robots, and we
Right.
make mistakes and we have to deal with time and life. Then it's like, okay, he can do the gross amount of stuff because you wrote everything. But it's like, well, if I can help with this, I can make this picture, I can make this post, I can start a wiki or translations to bring your content into the Spanish market. It's like, man, this man has a message to send, and I want other people to listen to it. I mean, you really reached that point in me, which I was like, that's why I'm so inclined to help you because it's like, man, you do seriously do have a good point to share. It's like if everyone could see this point, maybe a few people can understand it, and maybe we can be more. What's the word? Do you get what I'm trying to say?
Mhm.
Like, let's get together to try and see how can we sort out life in a way that is not detrimental and it's not backwards since we're trying to push forwards and do the right thing. Let's try to keep on that. That's your message, man, and that's why I love your book so much because they are sincere, they are honest, and they touch you. You don't really know, and you admit to it, but it's like you keep playing with the idea and you're not close to listen to others about what they think and where they come from. Many people come from different backgrounds, and it's like, yeah, we all do. We are like around 8 billion people, 8 billion different stories inhabited in the same rock at the
Mhm.
same time. It's like, okay, if we can do things together and push towards something nice and good, well, the next generation is gonna be better off, and so on and so forth. And that's order, man, in some point or regard, maybe.
Knock on wood.
Yeah. Seriously. But
Does
that's how I feel.
does anybody else have any questions? It kind of the chat calmed down because I think that our talk got real serious. And everyone was like, "What are they going to do next? Let's see if they offend someone." But if anybody
No, this is not the case.
has any
I have my
questions about
order.
anything, do you? Oh, this is funny. Womp. The most genuine people. I changed his life. I think I could hand Anthony my spare change and change his life though. So, but I appreciate the compliment. Thank you. Updates on stuff while we're segueing. Lost in the Found is out on all formats now, which is really exciting. People seem to be really enjoying it. I'm really proud of that book. The hardcover Kickstarter for AUD is surging along forward. All of the books are now past formatting, and I just ordered all of the books 2, 3, and 4 to come in, which is a lot of books. And then I'm still waiting to get the physical proofs on 5 through 8, which are on order, which should be here. I think they're supposed to be shipping like next couple of days. And then once I get them and go through them and make sure that they're okay, then I can order those. And then the last book that I can order for production is book 1 because I need the names that people want in the Kickstarter credits to go in there, and not everyone's gotten their survey done. So that'll be, it's the first book in the series, but it'll be the last one that I have made because of just the virtue of the system. But everything's pretty much ready for the Kickstarter. I have all the shipping materials. Those just came in the other day. At like just off screen here, I have like 1, 2, 3, 4 bundles of boxes. No, 6 bundles of boxes and a case of poster tubes because some of the posters have to ship rolled up. And then I've got like just, I mean, literally there's just piles of shit here. Patty, if you never got your survey from Kickstarter, you just have to log into Kickstarter. And usually when you log in, if you have a survey that's undone, you get a little ding. So will I have a heart attack when I give you the postage costs? More than likely, Rachel. Australia is atrocious. Hi, Lyndall. Welcome to the group. Was that your question, or are you just announcing your presence? Like a bus station. Anyway, so the Kickstarter's going well. That'll be done. I posted a link the other day that the comic book that I was working on with my artist buddy Jason DeBee, the Rock Jockeys comic book, is now back into circulation. We're working on it again. He and I 4 years ago, 5 years ago, went like really hard on it and got pretty far along in the process, and then he got a whole bunch of crazy expenses that kind of dropped into his lap, and his work hours changed, and he was basically like, hey, I gotta chill, like I gotta focus on doing this other stuff for now. And he worked on it a little bit as time went on, but last month or so he was like, hey, life has calmed down, I've got all these things done, I've got some spare time in my schedule, do you want to go back and do this thing? And I was like, hell yeah, like that was a fun project. So we had ourselves a long video chat and went over all of our kind of hopes and dreams for the project. And now, instead of being like an ash can 10-page comic, we're actually shooting for like a 40-page kind of a trade paperback thing. And he's working on pages, illustrating them, and then I had to rewrite some of the beginning script, and then now I'm finishing out the rest of the script, which is about another 30 pages. But writing a comic book is not like writing a book. And a 30-page comic book, if you're feeling it, you can write a couple pages a day. So the other day I sat down and wrote 6 pages, for example, 6 pages of the comic book just in one sitting. So I'll actually be done writing the script probably in the next few days, based on how that's going. And then it'll take him a few months to illustrate it, and then we'll go through that whole process and see how how it comes out. And then I'll probably do a Kickstarter for it, because that's what comics do now. But that won't be anything going on anyone's radar till probably like October or something like that. But it'll be really, really cool. I said before that, like, comic books were a big thing that got me into reading. I could not sit and read a book when I was a kid. I was too flighty. But when I started getting comic books, when my parents were buying them for me, I would sit there and I would devour them. I would devour comic books, and I'd read them and I'd read them again and I'd read them again and I read them again. And that got me, that was my gateway drug to reading books, which, has obviously turned into a thing for me for a job. So, my first love is for comics, right? And like I have all these, superhero ideas and stories that I want to tell. So I will consider it an enormous life goal success to actually have a comic book that has my name on it. And, we're getting there. So Anthony Castro's got his Bad Wabbit comic book that I've been helping him with, and his Kickstarter's going live in 10 days or something like that. It's a really fun comic, and I'm very proud of it, and I think it'll be really fun. But yeah, it's something that I always wanted to do. So that's moving as well. And then Diggory 3 is now in process. So I have that fully outlined. I think I have a title for it now. I need to do a little bit more work, but I don't want to announce it yet. And that should take me a couple months to write. So
Any spoilers you want to drop in?
For Diggory?
Yep.
How can I say this and not be too ominous? So I don't know if anyone here has read both of the Diggory books, but Diggory is kind of like my flagship 2.0 series, because eventually Adrian's gonna stop, right? Like I have a couple more books left in the series, and I really need to have another series that I'm working on that I can write that has a nice following. So I know that I have like kind of guaranteed projects that'll help keep the lights on. And Diggory's got some steam and is doing pretty well. But it's it's cosmic horror, so it's like small town monsters and other dimensions and weird cults and stuff like that, which is a lot of fun to write. And book 2 was an expansion of the town, where we learn more about the cults and stuff in the town that he's in, and how they're all intertwined with his family, and how he's not on the outside looking in, he's on the inside, and they're all looking at him. And book 2 ends with pretty disastrous confrontation with an entity that got into the town, that he actually had to like ally with people that he thought were enemies to help fight. And it ends, and he has made more enemies in different ways. And in book 3, his enemies are going to go after him in some pretty unconventional, weird ways. And I think it might make people really uncomfortable what I've got planned. So pretty excited about that.
Like book 14.
Aaron, yeah, Aaron, the New Zealand postage. I totally get it. I didn't actually offer international shipping on the vast majority of things. There were a few levels that were international because they were only going to be like a couple bucks to drop in the mail, no matter where, an international stamp kind of a thing. But a few people were like, no, I want to do this. I don't care what the shipping is. And they're just going to like eat it, I guess. Do I have any plans to carry on the Tesser series? This is actually the second time I've had this question today, which is a good sign. So I've said before that I sold the rights, the audio rights to Tesser to Audible back in 2016, 2017, and they wanted 3 more books in the series, which brought it up to 5. And then I had James narrate book 1 and book 2 because I had such a great relationship with him, working with Adrian, that I really just wanted him to be the voice for that series. And then he dipped on book 3. He said he didn't want to do it anymore, which was a sign of things to come. And Audible had to go out and find another narrator, and they hired Raphael Corkel. Or Corkel, I forget how you pronounce his name, and he's been good, but he's different, So whenever there's a narrator change mid-series, there's strife, which has cost the series pretty heavily, because like when you look at the sales, like book 1 and book 2 are strong, and then book 3 drops dramatically, and we start getting a lot of returns on book 3 because it's a narrator change. So my contract was only for 5 books. The 5 books are written, and because of the dwindling level of readers and listeners after book 2, it's really scary to commit to writing more in that series because I don't know if it'll actually pay for itself. And when I write a book, it's like 3 or 4 months of work. Plus, if I'm going to independently produce it, I have to do all the artwork. I have to pay for all the editing. I have to pay for all the formatting. I have to do it's entirely on me financially to do it. And then if it doesn't sell, right, not only am I out the 3 months of time that I put into the book, but I'm also out all of the money that I put in to get it to market. So in order for me to commit to something like that, I have to have a pretty good idea that it's going to at least break even. And I am just not sure. So I would love to write 2, 3, 4 more books in that series. Like I actually have the ideas. I have some outlines done. I have great ideas where I could go with that series. But like, I don't know, like I would need to see pretty consistent sales pick up for me to be able to bite the bullet on it. This is my sister. Hi, I love you too. And Scott, has anyone ever approached you about an AUD TV series? So I did a live chat 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, and talked all about this. And it was like a 40-minute long conversation just talking about this. So I'll try to be more succinct with it. So yes, I have been approached about an AUD TV series. I've also been approached about an AUD movie series. And in 2020, right before COVID, 2019, 2020, right before COVID, I signed an agreement with a major TV producer, and COVID shut Hollywood down. And we had a ton of momentum early and had a lot of really great meetings. COVID killed it. And when Hollywood started to come back, my TV producer was starting to come back to working on it, and he had some other projects that he was contractually obligated to fulfill. And we kind of circled the wagons again, made a big push, did a whole bunch of work to get it in front of some people. We had some pretty major pitch meetings, and the TV show kind of got caught between a rock and a hard place. We basically had an incredibly good chance at having HBO pick it up. for a couple of reasons, for a significant number of reasons. But HBO is merging with Discovery. And when we went in for the pitch meeting with the head of TV or the head of production at Warner Brothers, he basically was like, I can't greenlight anything because we're merging. And, Discovery has basically said that, you can only continue to finish the things that you're already working on, and you can only greenlight new seasons of things that have already been successful. You can't greenlight any new shows right now. And when we got that no, which was like, we were like a 95% yes going into that meeting. When we got that no, it was a pretty significant blow. And then it was like, okay, well, that was our sure thing. And it just got, yanked out from under us. So now what? And we just pivoted and started to, reach out to other studios. And we got a couple of other studios, 2 other studios that were actually pretty interested in becoming involved in the project. And, those didn't pan out. And the last time we had any like significant progress was last October. And we had a couple of, really good phone calls with some production companies. We had one really good meeting with a pretty major movie studio that actually wanted to develop it for TV. But they opted not to pursue it due to, various other reasons. And then my agreement with my TV producer has expired, and the rights have reverted back to me, and he has not renewed the agreement. So as of right this second, it's dead. So we were right there. We were in the pitch meeting. We had budgets. We had pilot scripts. We had everything. We were ready to go. We had a special effects company attached. We had a couple writers attached. We had showrunners attached. We had financing, and then we just couldn't get the rest of it put together. So, yeah,
damn shame.
It's a bummer.
The story has so much potential, man. Seriously, I mean, there could be even spin-offs. You create a whole universe, man. It's like, and it's well made. It doesn't have flaws that you can actually poke into that say, no, this is ridiculous. No, it makes sense, man. Like, it's a damn shame they actually dropped the ball on you. That's my impression. That sucks.
I'm not gonna lie, it was a incredibly depressing series of events, because we were there. Like we were having casting conversations, like we were like talking like who's repped by who, like is this person available, is that person available? And we had people reaching out, and we were trying to get talent attached, and like we were there, like we were doing the big push, and then all of a sudden it just died. Like literally overnight it died. I got the email that we were having the meeting with the head of Warner Brothers, and like he was supposed to take the meeting like the week after, but he called my main executive producer and had time to like sit down the next day. And Pete went over and pitched him, and literally like I got the email like, hey, Pete's going in to pitch the head of WB tomorrow. And I was like, wait, what? Like what? Like seriously, like the head of Warner Brothers, that's HBO, right? And then it was like they said no, and it was like pulling a hand grenade and tossing it in my lap. So, and if you're curious, not to name drop too much, but Pete, when I say my executive producer Pete, I'm talking about Pete Safran. So if you know anything about TV or movies or whatnot, Pete Safran is the guy who does like Insidious and Annabelle. And he's made a ton of good horror movies. He's also the head of television for Warner Brothers. And he is now the co-head of DC movies with James Gunn. So one of the big reasons why the show kind of didn't get pushed real hard is Pete got hired to run DC. Like literally the week after we had the pitch session. And he basically is like, well, I got to do this now. Like I'm literally in charge of DC movies. And he just like couldn't come back and meaningfully commit to trying to get AUD made, because it is a big commitment. It's a big story. So I'm happy for his success. I'm very excited that he's doing well and thriving and whatnot. It would have been great to have him be very successful on my project. But you know, it is what it is.
So just like sometimes you get it, sometimes you don't, but you gotta keep pushing.
Yeah, Scott, I hope it comes back. It is depressing. The reality of it is it got really far along once, and I still have people out in Hollywood that are fans, um, you know, who are interested in seeing it come to fruition. And if I got that far once, it could happen again. Um, and in talking to other authors that have had stuff circle the drain out in Hollywood trying to get produced, the moral of the story out there is it's yes, 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 right? Everyone's excited, everyone's on board, everyone's doing it, and then you get one no, and that's it.
Mm.
Right. So in publishing, it's no, 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 no. And then finally, one person says yes, and you're published, right? It's the exact opposite of publishing.
Mm.
Where you sit down, you have a pitch meeting, and someone's like, "Hey, that's exciting. It sounds great. Let's pursue it. Do this, do that. Call this person. Yeah." And then you talk to them, and they're like, "Yeah," and they start working on it, and everyone starts to work, and then you finally get to the person who says yes or no. We're going to do it, and if they say no, that's it. So it's a very frustrating process. So
There's still time, man. Who knows? Maybe in a
yeah,
few years.
yeah. So the one of the things that I need to like really kind of do some soul searching about is getting an agent again, because I had a literary agent for several years that I worked with, and he was instrumental in getting me some publishing contracts and helped me expand my reader base and listener base and whatnot. And ultimately, I wound up letting him go because we just didn't have good chemistry,
Mm.
like personality wise. Like we had just a really hard time communicating with each other, and it was hard to work with him. Not that he's a bad person, he's perfectly fine, but just like his manner and my manner didn't work.
Mm.
But when you have a literary agent, they have the connections to help build those opportunities. And I haven't had a literary agent since him. 2020, 2019, I think he and I stopped working together. Um, but like in order to keep pushing into Hollywood, like a big thing to do would be to get an agent again. Um, the issue is with me getting an agent now, like I'm big enough that I make enough money to support myself without having an agent, right? And agents who sign me at this point won't be making any money on the things that I've already written. So they look at all the success I've already had, and it's like, okay, that's cool, but how good is the next thing you're going to write?
Mm.
You're only as good as your next thing. So it's actually still pretty difficult for me to get an agent, even though I've had some pretty notable success, because they're not representing the stuff I've already written. They're representing the stuff that I'm about to write. So it would be difficult for me to get an agent, and I just don't know if I have the heart right now to sit there and like reach out to 20 agents and try to build those relationships. And it's a lot of work, and it's a lot of no's. So, but we'll see.
You should go for it, man. I mean, if you don't do it, you already have the no. It's like, okay, I know it's hard to see it again. It's sales pitching, self pitching, sales pitching, and trying to convince them that they're gonna take it. But at some point, yeah, you should really do it. I mean, you should not get yourself behind it because it's like, do it.
Um, Leah, my wife, is basically like, just do it. Like, just shut up, take 2 weeks, like pause everything else and just do it. And maybe just get an agent strictly for Hollywood, like a literary agent that won't rep my books or my writing, but will just go and try to get me TV deals. Because like, the old adage is that you make the money on the movie, right? Um, and that's true, because like the advances that writers get on books from even pretty big publishing companies aren't that much money. Like really, they're just not that much money. And big name authors get reasonable advances that they can live on. But that's not that many authors anymore, and those like huge advances are very few and far between. But even a modest TV show pays out a pretty good chunk of money to a writer. Um, so the hope is that you write the book and it's pretty successful, and then you get a TV show or a movie, and that's where you actually get your payday. Um, so it would be worth it for me to push to try and get more stuff made out there. So, but we'll see. We'll see.
What about, let me take attention on this, but a video game? I mean, you have many universes. Maybe you can also pitch in that front because
Mhm.
mobile games, at the very least, have lots of people downloading them. Even if
Mhm.
they're free, you're gonna get a lot of newcomers that found it because of a game that they found
Mhm.
funny or playable.
I mean, it would be cool. It's not a skill set that I have. I was a game developer for a long time, but not games like that. So like the concept of code and how they would work, and the how people monetize them is like kind of literally very far outside of my expertise or knowledge.
Mm.
But I mean, any way that you can expand, your footprint in the world is good. Like, I don't know how many of you guys know Dave Simpson, but he was the guy who wrote Zombie Road, and he's had a lot of success. And he footed the bill to make a pilot for his own show. Right? He literally like dropped $20,000 and filmed a pilot, and then pitched it to Hollywood, and it got shot down. Nobody wanted to buy it. So he was out all that money, and then now he's got buddies at a game development studio, and they're trying to make a game for Zombie Road. Um, and he posts about how much work it is and how long it is, and how it's years of work to get a decent game to market. And I don't know how he's finding the time to work on it, and I don't think he's actually doing that much work on it. I think he basically is just like licensing it to them and hoping that it's a success, but um, and hope it is a success for him. But yeah, I don't know. Like that stuff's scary, right? Because it's like as soon as you start giving away rights to people, and like you're investing time and effort in big question marks, it's scary. It is.
Yes. It's putting yourself on the line in a fire and see if other people consider your thing valuable. And that hard is a hard thing to do. You're putting yourself out there and you're exposing yourself. Yeah, it's hard, man. I get it.
Yep.
It's not easy, but you should keep on striving on it. I mean, did you seriously have not only AUD, even the Tesla universe, man? It's like at some point I was even thinking about a goblin based game on the Tesla universe
Hmm.
because it's like, okay, there's a new beginning in which magic shows up again. And it's like all these magic creatures that have been hiding all this time, they actually have been doing their thing in their own niches. And it's like, well, everything is out in the open now. And it's like, okay, they're going to integrate to society at some point. I was thinking about a goblin game. You know how in the Shadow Mate story you related me to goblins. I
Hmm.
was thinking, well, maybe the Shadow Amate thing could be used for goblins actually to develop an economy
Hmm.
and get a hold of some political influence
Hmm.
and some maybe other things that happen, maybe a
Yeah.
war. Who knows? I mean,
Yep.
there's a lot of things to actually exploit your universes because they are thorough and it's like, oh man, I wish I could really know how to code games. I tried, but no,
It's
I
it's
don't
a
really have
lot.
them. It's a lot.
It's a
Seriously, a lot.
lot. Yeah. I mean, you can go to like, I don't know, that's like Upwork or whatever, and you can pay people to make apps for you. And I'm sure it's not to the level of like making a highly interactive game that has like, tons of it of variability, but like it might behoove me at some point to like think of a way to skeletonize some kind of an app game and put it out, because who knows, maybe it'll be popular with some people, maybe it'll bring some new universe in. It's always possible. And
Yeah.
those thinking outside the box kind of ideas like that are huge for for finding ways to be successful, you know. And the, I talk a lot about the hustle of being a writer, right? It's not just writing the books, right? And in order for me to be able to do this as a job, right, I have to do the hustle, right? Like I've got to be marketing, I've got to be messaging people, I've got to be doing stuff like the Kickstarter, I've got to be, setting up Redbubble merch sites, I've got to be doing Patreon to try and, balance out income, and I've got to be, doing this, that, and the other thing, and trying to get monetized on social media. So when I'm doing stuff like I might be able to make a few extra bucks a month because, life is expensive, as we all know. And the money from writing can be very inconsistent. Right. So on the months that I release a book, I sell a whole bunch more. And then in the in between period, sales dip down. And finding ways to like make those dips not so deep makes our lives a whole lot easier. And that hustle is what gets you there. And like finding new ways and interesting ways to try and like entertain people and get people hooked and get people interested, and trying to show up on podcasts and do interviews and try to get reviews, and any way to get more discoverability is the name of the game. Like I spend as much or more time thinking about ways to try and be noticed by people as I do actually writing books. I wish it was more writing books, but
such is life.
Such is life, right?
Well, maybe you need an assistant, man. I mean, someone that helps you with it.
I'm hoping pretty soon I'll be able to enlist my kids to do stuff like that.
That could work.
I've got really bright kids, but 5 and 7 is still a little too young to have them start working on social media. Maybe another year or two, we'll see. But yeah, it's a hustle. What do you do for work? This is a fun story.
I have a shop in which I repair electronics. I sell used electronics. I buy used electronics all around TVs, computers, hi-fi systems, and tablets, and all that kind of stuff. That's what I do for a living, which takes a lot of time because for a long time I worked with my dad, and we kind of had a lot of friction about how to do stuff, things. He had an accident with a bike around 10 years ago, 15 years ago maybe, and he always been on surgery after surgery after surgery, and that kind of put him in a position in which he cannot do so much stuff. So I've been managing by myself for a few years now, and that's what I do for a living. I fix computers, video game consoles like PlayStation 2s. They are the bane of my business, actually. All the console games, PS3, PS2, flashing them, pirating them to play pirate games on them. That sketchy stuff I'm into because I like that. I'm a pirate. So
You
that's
don't
what I
live
do
by
for a
nobody's
living.
rules.
Yeah, it's like it's another way of getting things, which is not what actually helps authors like you, but at the same time, they do in other ways. Remember that I was pirating your stuff for a long time until you kind of, well, have it. I prefer you having it.
The thing is like I've had this conversation a couple other times about like the whole pirating thing, and I put a lot of effort into fighting pirates early on. Like when I first got published, and I was like first like relying on people buying it to make money. I mean, I would put a ton of time into going to YouTube and like doing takedown notices and copyright claims, and like it became like time consuming. And as soon as I took them down, they'd be up the next day with a different account. And it got to the point where it was like whack-a-mole. One would go down, one would pop up, one would go down, one would pop up. And there was a point a few years ago where it was like, you know what? The amount of people who have reached out to me saying that they found me on YouTube and then went on to buy a book or buy a shirt or get involved in some way. I thought about that and I was like, you know what? That's valuable. Like that's valuable. And I said, you know what? Fuck it. Right? Like I'm gonna pretend that all of these pirates are just free marketing, right?
They are.
I'm gonna say that like, hey, they did all the work of putting it up. They did all the work, and if they're making $20 a month on my content, with ads or whatever, all right, cool, fine, sure. Um, and arguably, the people who are listening to me pirated on YouTube probably don't have the money to buy the book anyway. And if they weren't listening on YouTube, they wouldn't find the writing at all. They wouldn't find the story at all. So by pulling it down, what am I doing? I'm not really getting any money back, right?
So,
Because I'm not going to put it up because those people weren't going to buy it anyway. So at least this way, more people are finding the story, more people are talking about the story, and hopefully it's drawing more people in. There's a writer in the field. His name's Cory Doctorow, and he talks about pirating and stuff. And he says, think like a dandelion, where a dandelion, turns into its little seeds, and they all blow away, right? I don't know if you have dandelions in Argentina.
yeah,
Um, but they put all these little seeds up in the air and they all float everywhere, right? And the dandelion doesn't give a shit where they go, right? It just puts out as much as it possibly can in the hopes that enough of them stick wherever they land, that it can continue, its line, right? To spread its species further. And he says, think like a dandelion. Every time your stuff gets pirated, that's one more seed that went out,
mhm.
right? That's one more chance for it to take root. That's one more chance for a little nest of people to find out that will spend the money, right? And if you just worry more about just getting it out there and not worried about making sure that every single little seed, gets you returned, then A, you're not going to stress and worry about being pirated. And B, you can just be happy that people found it. So I've been thinking like a dandelion, and I think it's been helpful.
Well, the thing about pirating from your point of view is that you cannot measure success with pirating because it goes out there, it happens, they land wherever they land, people get it, and you don't really know, you cannot measure it, you don't get any kind of analytics on those. And that's somewhat stressful because you don't really actually know if they are actually landing somewhere and they are getting you new people coming over. I think many people may have found this group because of YouTube, and it comes to a point in which I actually been leaving comments in those pirated videos to it's like, okay, if you have enjoyed this, join the group in Facebook
All
and
right.
join us. Okay, this is the way you got it. This is the way you get it. This is what actually you can do. It's like,
Mhm.
okay, man, come over.
Right.
Let,
And people
let's
have.
do
And doing videos like this more regularly, right? Where I'm live streaming and talking to people and having these conversations, I'm making sure that they're getting posted over on YouTube, and it's increasing my footprint there. So when
it.
people are listening to my books, when they search me out, they're finding my actual page
Yep.
and looking at these videos, right? And learning more about the stories, learning more about me, learning more about the community, whatever. And I'm getting them back, right? Like they may not have paid me for the books that they pirated, and that's okay. I get it. I've been broke before too. And having them join in, with these, holding court videos and like, when I'm working on dice or whatever, feels really good to me because it's like I can still interact with those people and I
Mhm.
don't judge them. I don't begrudge anybody who found me that way. And I've mentioned some of them that they message me like, hey, if you need an audiobook, just let me know. I can give you a code, you know. But it's
Like
just
this.
it's just the way it is, right? So you can't stop all the pirates. And I don't have any interest in fighting pirates all day. I'd rather write books and bullshit with people like this. So
Well, it's kind of Adrian related because it's not fighting them. It's like, okay, let's make friends and let's actually bring these people over. It's like you're doing actually what Adrian may have done. It's which like, okay, you're not buying it. It sucks in that regard because you're not making money on it. But at some point they may start doing it because they won't really want to support you. And not making enemies is what Adrian really tries
right,
to do. That's what he strives for,
right,
and it's actually in parallel with with what you're really doing and what you write about, and it's just works. I think it works. That's why I'm not so judgeful about pirating, because I'm one myself. That's why I do it, because I don't have the money to spend on content, and maybe I can do something else, which is why I'm here. It's like at
Hmm.
some point it was like, I like what this guy's doing, and I have not paid a dime for it. It's like, well, let's help in the group. Let's try to prop him up. Let's boost him up. It's like
Hmm.
it's a few things gather all together. I mean,
And that to
kind of.
me is tremendously valuable, right? Because that like it builds a sense of community. It makes me feel way more welcomed. It makes me feel like I don't have to kill myself to do things when I know people have my back. And like, how much money would I have made on you? Like, really, right?
$100.
Like, right, maybe $100, right, over the course of 10 years.
Yeah.
And while that adds up, obviously, over the course of, thousands of readers, but like, you've given me way more than $100 worth of support, in my opinion, over 10 years, right? So like, that's amazing. That's like so cool. Um, so like, who gives a shit, right? Like, I don't like. It's not going to keep me up at night. I have a new friend. Eventually, I'm going to buy a plane ticket to Buenos Aires, and we're going to hang out, and we'll figure it out.
Or
So
me going there.
yeah, hey,
I
we
get
don't
a
have any
visa
space for
and
you, but we'll
we
make
can come
space.
back. Yep.
I'll clean some boxes off these shelves. So we can slide you right in. Works really good.
I can sleep under the table. Just wrap a blanket and how do you call it, a pillow, and that's it.
There you go.
I'm not really. I've lived on the streets for a few weeks, so it's like, yeah, like Adrian says, I don't have high standards, so it's whatever.
Well, we always take care of our family. So Leah will feed you. That's all you really need. She'll
Okay,
sit down.
remember that yesterday.
She'll
Like
shove
that.
good food. All right. So it's 11. It's been 2 hours. I'm starting to get tired. I'm sure Nahuel wants to run around the neighborhood outside for a few minutes.
I don't
So
work tomorrow, so it's like,
yeah.
that's not me. But still,
Thank you for coming on. Thank you. Thank you for everything you've done for me. I see it. I recognize it. I constantly think I wish I could do more to say thank you to you. So hopefully having you on here for a couple of hours and letting some people see and recognize you and put a face to the name that they see in the group can at least give you a sense of appreciation, not only just from me, but from the other people in the group, because you have done a lot for me. And I see it. I know it. I talk about you to people. You are a very big part of my career and my life, and I am grateful for everything that you've done and for who you are. So
no, you don't even, it's like, man, you have paid in advance. Seriously, it's like your stories helped me sort out a few things I had in the background and I was not paying attention. They were becoming big monsters, and it's like I took on them because of your writing, man. The way you write, how you're sincere about what you try to do, what you try to say, how you develop your stories, your words, everything, man. You have paid me in advance, and this is my giving back to you. I cannot give you money, but I can give you work. Then that's the way I try to help. And I really appreciate you having me tonight. This was kind of hard for me because I told you I'm kind of too self-aware of myself, and they call this my premiere.
yay.
I'm willing to do this again. Whenever you want to invite
Awesome.
me, just let me know in advance so I can set up a few things. And I'm over here, man.
For sure. All
I
right.
got your back.
I'm gonna let everybody go now. I'll stick around for a minute. I'll do a post show interview with you. All right.
Okay.
Good night, everyone. Bye
Bye,
bye.
everyone. Have a good one.